Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tiger Tank 1-2, how are you gonna call me? I don't really care, and welcome back to World of Tanks. Today we're gonna have a little mini review of the LHMTV, that is the British Tier 8 light tank, the standard version, the one that you can get off the tech tree, and then we obviously have the Senlac. Today we're gonna be checking this tank out. I have a game that was actually quite good, quite decent for this tank. And we're going to be talking about the reason why this vehicle is not very good in World of Tanks, and giving a little bit of a feedback what they could do, how they could make this tank better, and go on from there, because I've recently started playing the British light tanks to get eventually to the Manticore, because I think the Manticore is quite an interesting vehicle. Obviously, if you want to get to the Manticore, you have to go through the setter, the LHMTV, the G-Sor, and then eventually you'll reach the Manticore. Now, obviously, I played the Crusader, and it's also at the same time right now like the Masteries, I think. What was it? Like, we're able to unlock these tanks for less money, 4.27 mil instead of the 6.1, so you save 30%. That's pretty damn good. So yeah, I actually did enjoy the setter. I think maybe I'll do a separate kind of video on the setter. I don't have it in my garage anymore, I think, but I might just rebuy it, because I did enjoy the setter, and I do not really enjoy the LHMTV. It has its moments, but these are very fleeting and in between, and I think they're quite a good representation of what a light tank should not be like. Obviously, we understand that Wargaming do not want to release any more overpowered vehicles, and I think this line, when they released it, it was very early on, very certain or clear that it was not overpowered at all, but more or less underpowered. So I'd say without further ado, let's jump right into the comparison. I forgot to put one last tank into the comparison. That is obviously the Senlac, because we have to put the Senlac in, and we're just gonna put like the exact kind of setup on this tank as I would do on other vehicles, just so we have kind of the same statistics and the same equal playing field, because obviously if we have to compare them, we have to compare them with a fair kind of way, because all these tanks I would play just as I did right there. I did modify all of them, and this will actually be quite interesting to look at. So let's start. So the LHMTV, if we take a look at the vehicle right here, unfortunately it's on that side. You know what, we're just gonna stick to the comparison. I'm sorry about that. So if we take a look at the vehicle, we are running the Top Gun, which is the 85mm HV L40 gun, which does boast 230 alpha, 226 millimeters of pen, and only fires 6 rounds per minute. So that means 10 seconds where you're reloading. Now the gun itself, the statistics, the accuracy, the dispersion, the aim time, the damage output, the pen are all actually quite decent. For Tier 8, a light tank having 226 millimeters of pen, that is quite interesting, because I think most other vehicles do not have that crazy amount of pen. That's, as you can see right here, 46 millimeters more than the HWK 12, and that is boasting a 90mm gun. So that's quite interesting. That's something that really sets this tank apart from the other light tanks. It has really good pen, a gun that does 230 HP damage. Does not reach the same as the HWK 30 or the HWK 12, because obviously it's not 90mm, it's 5mm less in caliber size, so obviously it does not do the same amount of damage. Now, on the other hand, you can see that the M41 Walker Bulldog, the LTTB, let's just check if we have the Top Gun on it. We have the Top Gun on it. It also is an 85mm gun. They don't even boast, like, they're like 56 millimeters behind the LHMTV. So that is a huge change. It's really, really different. But the thing is, a light tank obviously is not supposed to be engaging from the front. So the 226 millimeters of pen will most of the time not be necessary if you're, you know, doing your light tank business and you're flanking around and maybe just spotting tanks, and you don't really have to use your gun at all because you're kind of passive scouting. That means obviously you're gonna have a drawback. Your pen is really good, that's gonna be great, you know, but your rate of fire is really, really terrible. It's worse than the HWK-12, and the HWK-12 is already a really underpowered tier 8 medium light tank, especially if you consider it to other premium light tanks. The HWK-30 with a caliber of 90mm, which does 240 alpha damage, 187 mil of pen, which is the second or third best in the category. You have a reload time of like 6 seconds, 5.82 seconds to get a shot off. And the gun actually boasts very good dispersion rate, high DPM, as you can see. The aim time is lower. So basically it just outpaces the LHMTV in every single category except for alpha damage. Or, no, except for penetration. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, completely. All over the place. So that is something that you have to keep in mind. This vehicle, it does have 10 degrees of gun depression, 15 degrees of gun elevation. You know, it's nice to see that you have 10 degrees of gun depression, but at the same time, you know, your aim time is the longest out of all these vehicles. Your dispersion rate is one of the worst, but you know, the worst thing is your DPM is 1,441 at tier 8. 1,441. The HWK-30 is almost a double amount. 2,475. That is an increase. It's terrible. It's 1,000 damage per minute more than the LHMTV. Now, I know you're a scout. You're not supposed to be shooting all the time. You're not supposed to be doing massive amounts of damage, right? But in the end, you still need to utilize your gun. And if we take a look at the Senlac, which comes in at tier 8 as well, and is a premium, obviously, its rate of fire is so much better. It is running a 76mm kind of gun, I think. If we configure the Senlac real fast, or we actually just check it out in in the garage. The caliber of this gun is 20 pounder, which is, I have no idea, 20 pounder, so somewhere along the lines of, yeah, 76mm probably, maybe a little bit more. So you have a gun that does not boast as much pen, but has so much better rate of fire. It is so much better. Like, it's amazing. You do 2,000 DPM. That's still 500 more than the LHMTV. And the thing is that you do not have the option on the LHMTV to actually put on a gun that is similar to the Senlac. Is an absolute fucking terrible idea, because right now you have a 75mm gun at tier 8, which is a tier 7 gun, which only has the same, like, it has the same amount of DPM, 1,446. So this tank already is really, really badly off with, you know, the gun characteristics. The entire gun is only good at penning. Other than that, you're going to be stuck with, you know, having no DPM at all. And, you know, good luck if somebody's going to push you. Another light tank is going to push you. You're just going to get out DPM'd. And the problem is, okay, obviously, does that mean you have armor? Does that mean you have, like, a crazy amount of speed or something else? Well, the tank is small, so you have a small profile. You have a little bit of additional armor, 30 millimeters on the hull, while most of the other tanks only have, like, 15, 25, and 60 on the turret. Now, the 30 mil on the hull, it doesn't make 30mm on the hull doesn't make any difference. I mean, anything is going to go through at tier 8. The 60mm on turret is also not going to be that much of a difference. The only thing that I could say is because of the angle, because it's kind of a little bit rounded at the top, you might bounce some lucky shells, but most of the time you're not going to bounce anything. Now, the LTTB, on the other hand, with the 90 and 90 here, might just get a lot more luck with bouncing shells, but at the same time, 90mm is not going to save you as well. So you also only have 1050 HP, which is the second lowest out of all these tanks right here, as you can see. So basically, you are a tank that is kind of a glass cannon that, you know, has good pen, but doesn't have the rate of fire, that can, you know, still move around because it has great mobility, but at the same time is still the slowest out of all these vehicles, 63 kilometers per hour. Because it has no engine power. It is not a heavy tank, but it has no engine power whatsoever. 160 horsepower. If you compare it to the 800 that you have on the HWK, 800 horsepower. That thing is traveling at 70 kilometers per hour. This thing is traveling at 63 kilometers per hour. And then it also has a pretty bad traverse speed. So you have a vehicle that basically has no armor because it's a light tank, obviously. It has a gun that can pen, but it cannot really withstand or uphold the high expectancy you have of any light tank, where even the HWK has like 400 or 500 more DPM than that freaking gun. And you are even the slowest at the same time. So basically what will end up happening is you're going to be playing this thing and you're going to go up against the HWK 30. And this thing is just going to load 2 or 3 high explosive shells. You're going to be try to run away, right? And he is just going to catch up to you, slam you with 2 or 3 shells, while you could only put 1 shell into him. So yeah, that's pretty damn bad, because no one is going to be playing HWK 30 or LHMTV with a gun ram or anything like that, because you're playing a light tank. You're not trying to do most damage, you're trying to spot the most for your team. So you're going to be investing a lot into concealment and into spotting. Now that is the area where this tank actually does quite well. Now all these tanks are top configured in the art of play as I would do. As you can see right here though, on the spotting I do not have the binoculars. And on the concealment, I think with the Sandlag, the crew is just missing. But concealment wise, you can see you take the crown out of all these vehicles. 896, so you can stay hidden for a very long time. And that is exactly what Wargaming are trying to do here. They're trying to give us a tank that is really, really sneaky, that is hard to spot, that can really get into the enemy line and just sit there in a bush where other tanks will get spotted quite early. But the thing is, like, this concealment is not going to, you know, take away from the fact that your mobility is not as good, your survivability obviously is not important, but your firepower is just really lacking in every kind of sense. And this concealment stat is not going to make it like that amazing tank in the end. Obviously, it is going to be scouting quite well, because you are going to be using like good optics. So I have like everything on it, 801 meters view range, or 801 points in scouting. That's 485 meters in view range. But still, the HWK does punish it because I think I just have a better crew on it. So all in all, what can you say about the LHMTV? It is massively underwhelming. The only good thing it has is its small size, which in the end, if you get spotted, is not a good thing anymore, because people will just crush you. Like if you get rushed by something, everyone is going to go for a ram because you're such a lightweight, and you're just not going to be able to do any DPM in close range quarter engagement, you know, if you have to engage a light tank. There are a lot of situations where you're going to be on your own, going into a position to spot, you know, to do some early spotting and maybe engage certain light tanks. And that is something that I highly advise against in this tank, because as soon as you go into like an offensive position with this vehicle, which another light tank goes into, and a lot of people will be playing like other light tanks that are better than this vehicle, you're going to get absolutely hammered, because this tank cannot withstand or cannot, you know, compete with the firepower that other light tanks have, with the rate of fire, with, you know, with the mobility. It's not as fast to get away as the other vehicles. So there's the size that you have is your only strong point. it's only your only strong suit. But at the same time, it's also kind of your downfall, because if those light tanks spot you, they're going after you, they're gonna crush you, they will ram into you. I had so many games where I was, playing aggressively because I am used to my scouts to be at least, quite rapid with their guns, or have at least enough alpha damage to really dissuade anyone, just coming in there, because they know, oh shit, this thing is going to do 300, 400 damage to me if I'm not careful, and it's not worth it. So this tank doesn't even have that. It has the 85mm gun, but I have the feeling that they kind of wrecked it. They kind of screwed it up with the balancing department right there, because it needed more DPM. I think if you add more DPM to this tank, you're gonna have a much better vehicle. But the worst thing about this vehicle, if you have a good game, is not even the DPM. The worst thing is that you only have freaking 25 shells. It's getting worse. The higher you go in this in tiers, the higher tier the British light tank is, the less shells, or the smaller amount of shells it can carry. 25 shells, it does not seem to be, that little, to be fair, in a battle where your DPM is terrible anyway. But at the same time, if you do survive a long time, and you're going up against tier 9s, tier 10s, all of a sudden you find yourself without ammo, because you have not really been that conservative with your fire. So you might just be ending up in a situation where, well, since you have 226mm of pen, and you do have like a good position where you can just fire at the guys, you keep on firing and you notice, holy shit, I only have 5 shells remaining. What if there are like 3 more tanks that you have to engage, and they're all more like they all have higher amounts of HP than you have? So the only thing that you can do is either cap, or you just die, or draw it out, hide somewhere in the corner of the map. So this thing really, it's mind-boggling, because if you check out the ELC even 90, let's find the ELC even 90, ELC even 90 right here. Do you see how many shells this vehicle can carry? This vehicle right here, you're telling me this thing can carry 45 shells. 45. Look at the size of this tank, and now we compare it to the size of the LHMTV. The LHMTV is almost double the size of the ELC, not even 90, and it can only carry, I shit you not, 25 shells. Like, it's not like that I've picked just a couple of shells and not fully loaded it out, but 25 out of 25. So you just give this tank and then a complete additional retardant, so that it just cannot, you don't even give it a chance. It absolutely hinders this vehicle from becoming a decent tank, maybe even an okay tank. It's just a very underpowered tank, so it's not a lot of fun to play, especially if you're in a closed encounter map where you, I don't know, have to go up against vehicles in a city, and obviously your tank is going to get hammered, because any light tank will do really badly in a city unless it's flanking, but this tank will just do even worse. So, you end up in a position where you can't win. If you have like an open field, you might just be able to outspot everyone and, use the concealment to your advantage, but at the same time, well, your opponent will just, if they waltz in and they still spot you, they're just gonna be able to, finish you off quite easily, especially if you have to go up against other light tanks. And since, this game does not just put you up against medium tanks or heavy tanks, you're always going to have an enemy light tank somewhere around. And if it's not a HWK-12 or the LHMTV, you're going to be off with, basically, you're already going to start off worse than he is. So I think this rant, it shows you that I'm quite passionate about light tanks, and this light tank just, I even like to play it. I'm like a masochist. I like to do this kind of damage to myself. I like to be, be reminded of the pain that it is to play this tank. But it's actually fun somehow. I don't know why, but I'm just playing it at the moment, and I know that it's not a lot of fun to most players, because it just has so many downsides. And it makes it so much more difficult to have a good game in this tank. So let's say we jump over to the gameplay and we figured it out, and we just check it out, and we'll have a final verdict at the end. So I just checked the recording footage, and it's already 20 minutes long. So yeah, that's it's gonna be a while. You're gonna be watching at least 30 minutes of this video to just figure out why this tank is so bad. So maybe next time I should just cut it off a little bit more. So you can see we're playing on Ghost Town. This is supposed to be some kind of Soviet abandoned city somewhere. Does seem to be quite similar to southeast Russia, or close to the Aral Lake. I'm not sure what it's called in English. The lake that has completely dried up almost because they just redirected the flow from all the rivers. But it's not the point today. Today we're going to be talking about the LHMTV. You can see we're top tier. This is a blessing, absolutely, if you're playing this tank, top tier. But at the same time, everything can just pen you, and everything has a better reload time than you have. So in the end, maybe it's not a blessing. So we're playing against some tier 8s, and you can see they have a Batchat 12T, they have a T92, they have an EBR Hotchkiss, they have an A43. All of these vehicles are very, very dangerous to us because they just can out DPM us very, very easily, especially if they just load high explosive. They'll be able to go through us without a problem. But right here you can see this tank actually on this map where you have a lot of open spaces. You can just sit in the back, really get a bush and use your camo net, use your binoculars, and you're going to be able to do a lot of damage. So we were not spotted right there. This Batchat 12T was actually behind the bush, and that bush was not transparent, so he did not spot us. And I decided, you know what, we have to take out this Batchat 12T, so I fire and I reposition. And I just wanted you guys to check out the reload time on this vehicle. So we did 213 HP worth of damage right there, and we just reloaded now 2 seconds ago. And we obviously were spotted, but since we can just re-camo, we go up and we decide to stay here hidden and use this bush for ourselves. So this EBR on our team, the 75 FL10, we didn't even speak about the comparison between the EBR and this thing, but I don't think anyone has to compare these because the EBR is obviously going to win in every freaking single category. Actually spots the Scorpion G for us, and I think we managed to blind shot him twice like previously, and there we do it again. And you can see actually it's starting to become apparent that this is actually quite a good game for us already, because we can actually just snipe these guys from a range, and we have enough, you know, enough pen to go through any of them without a problem. We're getting some serious low rolls right here, 213 damage on the A43, but we are already at 1000 damage. And this is something where you have to kind of decide, you know, we don't really have any support behind us, so you just have to fire yourself. And I just want you guys to keep a check on the ammo counter, because we're already at 19 shots. So we fired 6 shots, and out of the 6 shots, we've managed to do about 1000 damage. So yeah, not a very good return that far, if we're being honest. So right here, the A43, he actually manages to spot us, but we can re-camo very easily and go into the bush right here. And we managed to pen the A43 with a high roll this time around, which makes our total damage tally up to 1385. But oh, tragedy strikes, we're getting spotted, and it turns out it's a Dicker Max over here, a tank destroyer. I did not spot this position or check it out. And you can see how quickly your HP dwindles. This is a tier 6 tank destroyer. He just did about, yeah, like, what was it, 312 damage to us, and we're down at 423. And with the reload time, you could see we would have never been able to really finish off this Stura Emil by ourselves without, you know, taking another shell, because his rate of fire is exactly the same as ours. He has like 10 seconds reload time with a 105mm gun, while we have like 10 seconds with an 85mm gun. And but still, in the end, we are able to spot these guys right here. You know, there's a free target for us, a light tank, the EBR Hotchkiss, which is AFK, which we take out with high explosive shells. And you know, in this kind of scenario, this tank is not too bad because you're far enough away. You can engage these guys, and you can be sure that you're going to be able to pen them because your pen is 226 millimeters. And obviously, if you're going up against tier 6, tier 7, tier 8 tanks, you know, this pen is going to be enough to go through the front part of certain tanks. But as you can see right here, it actually becomes a little bit more challenging now because it seems that our team has just spread afar, you know, too far away from one another, and now we have an engagement where they're going to be able to actually take out a couple of our tanks. So I want you guys to look down at the ammo counter, and you can see that the ammo counter right here, like, I'm not a very conservative player when it comes to ammo. I just shoot when I have the opportunity, and I want to do as much damage as I can. And you can see my conservative kind of way of spending our ammo right here is not really conservative at all. And I've just fired basically a couple of shots without really being able to hit them. And that kind of makes you wonder that this is a vehicle, this is a line where you have to actually, you know, think about every single shot you take, because in the end, it might be a shot that you need. So maybe it's worth more to not shoot a target that can already be fired upon by your teammates and just spot them and not fire at all. But right here you can see the defender, the challenger, they just appeared in the middle, and they took out our light tank and our IS-2. We pop another blind shot, and I still have not noticed that I'm running out of shells eventually. So the thing is, if we just look at it, the pen counter tells me that I can actually penetrate a defender with APCR shells, because APCR in this tank, let me just check it real fast, 258 millimeters. That is something that a tier 10 tank has on its standard AP shells, so that's pretty damn good for tier 8. Gotta be honest right there. So our total damage toll right here at the moment is 2,633 with all the assistance, all of it. And you can see this game basically is over. At this view range, at this distance, we're going to be able to engage these guys. And the aim time is just, oh my god, it's terrible. But at the same time, you can see this is what a good game in this tank looks like. Imagine now if we would have been in a RU-251, no, in the HWK-30. In that thing, we would have been able to just, you know, unleash hell with 5 seconds reload time, and they would have not been able to spot us as well, because our, you know, our camo would have still been good enough to hide from these guys. And yeah, in the end, it only allows us to do 2,593 damage in total, maybe a little bit more with the 2 or 3 hits that we had on the Scorpion G at the beginning of the match, but generally speaking, yeah, not that amazing, the damage total. And we did everything right. We pushed around the open space where we had like the best camo net advantage, where we had like the view range advantage as well, where we could actually fire at these guys at this corner and still pen them. And you know, the outcome is just not as thrilling as you would have with any other tier 8 light tank. Even with the HWK-12, you would have still had a better game, because obviously the gun, your DPM is better, and all these targets, most of them did not need the pen that we had, and was kind of just overkill, except for the defender, which we penned, I think, twice or once. And but still, from the side, you would have gone through with the HWK-12. So what can I say about this vehicle? What is my final verdict? It's criminally underpowered. It seriously needs some love. Wargaming really need to rebalance the British light tanks, if they want the people to really have a lot of fun. It's just not fair if you're going up against somebody that is not playing one of these tanks, and your teammate is playing this. You're basically just getting fucked over. The only thing that this thing can do better is, you know, sit in a bush and scout. obviously that's the main thing that this vehicle needs to do, but it's kind of a little bit embarrassing that they added the British light tanks in such a state into the game, and they really need to fix the DPM, give it more DPM, give it a little bit better engine power, and then you already have a tank that can be quite competitive at tier 8, and you don't really need to do that much. Like, just add more DPM, do it the same level as the HWK-12, and give it, like, I don't know, 100 or 200 horsepower additionally, and this thing is just gonna run circles around everyone, and, you know, can be quite a threat. But if they add like more DPM, they also need to add more shells, give it the same capacity as the ELC even 90, because it's a bloody joke that this tank cannot carry 40 shells, and the ELC even 90 can do, and the ELC even 90 has a 90mm gun. This thing has 85, so the shell type is even larger. So it's baffling, right? And yeah, I do enjoy playing these tanks. I don't know why. It's more challenging. Obviously, the damage output is not as impressive as I would have had with any other light tank, but you know, in total, I think it's a thing that a lot of people will not enjoy. A tank that nobody really will be enjoying, unless they're really main light tank players like me. And yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on this tank and on the British light tanks in total or in general. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of this underpowered kind of you know, thing that they have going on with the British light tanks, but I still enjoy them. So I'm looking forward to the Manticore eventually when I unlock it. I'm not looking forward to the G-Sor because I have the feeling it's just this tank with maybe a 90mm gun and just at tier 9. But we'll see how that will turn out. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I'll see you guys on the next one.